During the 6th century, Japan was profoundly affected by foreign culture. Most important was the importation of Buddhism from China and Korea. Buddhism would have an obvious influence on Japanese art, and it's also possible to trace through art the modifications that the Japanese would make to Buddhism, especially by reconciling with the existing religion, Shinto. Shinto is an ancient, indigenous religion that grew out of the agrarian lifestyle of the early Japanese, probably during the Yayoi period. Called Kami no Michi, or the Way of the Gods, Shinto stresses the worship of deities and their dwelling places in rocks, trees, waterfalls, and other natural features. These sites, called iwakura, are enclosed by wooden fences or similar structures and are venerated during different seasons. Images of Shinto gods and goddesses weren't made until after the influence of Buddhism reached Japan. The rope barriers around these sites, tied between posts, are thought to have given rise to a distinctive Shinto form, the torii. A Shinto shrine is located within an enclosure that's approached through a gate, or torii. The gate acts as a symbolic transition from profane to sacred space. The first written mention of torii is in a text from the mid-Heian period, but they probably existed earlier. Traditionally, torii were made from wood or stone. They were either left unpainted or painted red or orange with a black lintel, or kasagi, and nemaki, or sleeves that surround the base. Below the kasagi is a second, reinforcing lintel called a shimaki or shimagi, and beneath that is a beam called a nuki. It's often held in place with wedges called kusabi. After the initial torii, the path to a Shinto shrine may be crossed by a succession of other torii. The approach to the shrine may pass over bridges and through gardens or forest. Arriving at the shrine, the worshipper climbs the steps and sounds a gong to notify the deity of his or her presence. Following prayer and a low bow that may be sustained for a full minute, the worshipper offers gifts of food and drink. In earlier times, the gifts included cloth, but today offerings of washi paper are made. The shrine precinct at Ise is one of the most important in Japan because of its connections with the imperial family. The ruling clans of Japan claimed supernatural ancestry, the most important being the descent of the imperial clan from the sun goddess, Amaterasu. Since the time of the Empress Jito in the 7th century, the shrine has customarily been rebuilt every 20 years. The Honden, or main hall, at Ise is built in a design derived from the raised granaries of the Yayoi period. Its style is known as Shimezukuri. Because the shrine is associated with the imperial family, the style cannot be used anywhere else. Along the ridgepole are 10 katsuogi, which hold down the cypress bark roof, which originally would have been thatch. Extending up from the roof on either end of the building are chigi, boards with gold leaf ornament. Another of the most important Shinto shrines is at Izumo, in Shimane Prefecture. The Honden there is larger than the one at Ise. It has the same kind of raised construction and gabled roof. The staircase is on one of the ends and the door is on the right side. This design is called Taisha Zukuri, and is thought to be the earliest of all shrine styles. The introduction of Buddhism to Japan in the 6th century had a profound impact. For almost 800 years, the majority of Japanese art was directly related to Buddhism. The traditional date for the arrival of the religion in Japan is 552, but many scholars now believe that a date closer to 538 is more likely. Buddhism had existed for nearly 1,000 years before it reached Japan. It began with an Indian prince of the Shakya clan named Siddhartha Gautama, who was born around 563 BCE. At the age of 29, he renounced his royal position and vowed to devote himself to meditation on the meaning of existence. Six years later, he reached enlightenment while sitting under a Bodhi tree. Following his enlightenment, Siddhartha Gautama is known as Shakya Muni, the sage of the Shakya clan, or as Gautama Buddha. In Japan, he is known as Shaka, or sometimes Shaka Nyorai. Shakyamuni based his teachings on an idea of interdependence, in which every moment has its origins in multiple causes, and in turn becomes one of many causes for the next moment. Nothing is permanent, including the self. He also formulated what in Buddhism are known as the Four Noble Truths. These are: Number 1. All existence is suffering. Number 2. The source of all suffering is desire. Number 3. Freedom from suffering is achieved through the elimination of desire. And number 4. The path to freedom, called the middle way, lies between self-indulgence and self-mortification. Following the middle way, in other words, means neither engaging in pleasurable pursuits to excess, nor denying yourself all pleasure. Siddhartha had tried both, first as a prince, and then as an ascetic. The middle way is also known as the Eightfold Path, since it's the path of right understanding, right purpose, right speech, right conduct, right livelihood, right effort, right awareness, and right concentration. The middle path leads to freedom from vices, and ultimately to nirvana, which breaks the cycle of reincarnation in the world. Originally, Shakyamuni was considered a great teacher and not a god, but eventually a new doctrine arose in which he was deified, and other Buddhas were added to the pantheon. In addition, the idea of the bodhisattva was introduced. Bodhisattvas were those who had achieved enlightenment, but postponed their entry into nirvana until all other beings had achieved enlightenment. The early form of Buddhism is known as Hinayana, or Lesser Vehicle Buddhism, and the later form, involving deities, is known as Mahayana, or Greater Vehicle Buddhism. Asuka period ceramic tiles depicting the Buddha, such as this one from the late 7th century, are known as Senbutsu. Here the Buddha is shown seated under a Bodhi tree with his hands in the mudra symbolizing concentration. He's flanked by 2 bodhisattvas standing on lotus pedestals and 2 hiten, or flying bodhisattvas, who are descending from the heavens. Some resistance to Buddhism initially existed in Japan, but in 587 a civil war was fought in which supporters of the new religion were victorious. Following the war, Umako, head of the Soga clan and a follower of Buddhism, built the Asuka-dera, or Asuka Temple, in the Asuka district. The temple, which was finished in 596, was destroyed by a fire in the Kamakura period. Its foundations have been excavated, and we know that it originally consisted of a surrounding cloister to which entry was made by way of a chuuman, or gate, a pagoda, and 3 kondo, or golden halls. The Ascadera that you see here is a much smaller version of the original, and it dates to the Edo period. The main Buddha at the Ascadera, a Shaka, was put in place in 606. Although much of it has been restored, it does still exist. The statue is thought to be the work of the only Asuka period sculptor whose name is known to us today, Tori Bushi. Tori means maker of Buddhist images, and Bushi means master sculptor. He was the grandson of a Chinese craftsman who helped Soga Umako construct the Ascadera. The gilt bronze Ascadera Buddha, which is 9 feet tall, is depicted in a seated position with his right hand in the mudra symbolizing his power to grant tranquility, the Semui In, the fear not gesture, and his left hand is in the mudra signifying the granting of wishes, the Seganin, the vow-fulfilling gesture. The curls in the hair are one of the shogo, or signs of the historical Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, who after shaving his head, had his hair grow back in a curly stubble. 2 other signs of the Buddha are the Byakugo, or raised circle above the nose, and the Nikkei, or protruding element on top of the head. Another work attributed to Tori Bushi is the Shaka Triad, housed in the Kondo at Horyuji. The Shaka is similar to the Ascadera Buddha, but is seated on a triangular platform with flowing skirts. Behind him is a large halo with flamboyant patterns and depictions of the 7 Buddhas of the past. Above Shaka's head is a circular relief that represents the flaming jewel of the Buddha's wisdom, which is set on an upside-down lotus blossom. On the back of the halo is an inscription that describes the history of the triad. Tori Bushi was commissioned to sculpt the piece by the court of the Empress Suiko after Prince Shotoku became severely ill in 622. The image was intended as an offering on his behalf. Although he died, the sculpture was completed in 623 with the intent of promoting his rebirth in paradise. The style of the Shaka Triad originated in examples of sculpture in China in the early 6th century. The robes of the Buddha and the flanking bodhisattvas suggest very little about the bodies underneath. They're fairly flat and splayed out from the figures at the edges. The only surviving examples of painting from the Asuka period are on the famous Tamamushi Shrine. The shrine is constructed as a model of a kondo, or temple treasure house, that's set on a rectangular pedestal. The 4 panels of the pedestal are painted with images of bodhisattvas and guardian kings. The shrine is made of cypress and camphor wood, and the edges of the pedestal are bound with metal strips pierced with ornamental openwork patterns. Originally, the surfaces beneath the openwork were covered with iridescent wings of the Tamamushi beetle, which accounts for the name of the shrine. The paintings were done on a lacquer surface with a mix of 4 different pigments, oil from the shiso plant, and lead oxide. 2 of the paintings are Jakata stories, which describe the lives of Shakyamuni before that in which he achieved enlightenment. In the most striking scene, he's shown after encountering a starving tigress and her weak cubs. Pitying them, he offered his body for food, but they were too weak to bite. Having climbed a mountain, he strips off his robe and then jumps. At the bottom of the panel, the tigress and her cubs are shown consuming his ruptured body.